routine is boring. Routine people switch off. The difference between a ritual and a routine, a ritual has meaning behind it. It has intention, right?
This is deep. Okay.
Contohnya bikin teh, right? Bikin teh di Amerika, palingan panasin air, masukin tea bag, celup, udah palingan 30 detik kan. Nah, kita bandingkan sama orang Jepang. Tea ceremony Jepang yang paling basic 45 menit. Full tea ceremony 4 jam. And it's because they make it a whole ritual. It's infused with meaning and intention. We have to do the same with change.
Sobat Dunia Pro, selamat datang di Dunia Pro, podcast pertama di Indonesia khusus untuk profesional dan eksekutif. Hari ini bersama saya telah hadir teman saya, Friska Wirya, seorang change management thinker, change management consultant, yang mempunyai pengalaman internasional dan sekarang sedang mencoba untuk mendevelop dia punya practice di Indonesia. Spesialisasi beliau adalah change management dan sebelumnya beliau pernah bekerja untuk beberapa perusahaan multinational mining company di Australia. Jadi bisa dibilang mungkin agak hybrid Australian dan Indonesian, ya. Beliau juga sudah mengarang 2 buku so far, dan kita akan ngobrol-ngobrol mengenai beliau pribadi dan mengenai change management in general. Friska, welcome to Dunia Pro.
Makasih, thanks for the introduction.
Oke, mudah-mudahan introduction-nya pas ya?
Pas.
Oke,
Pas.
Ada yang harus tambahin nggak?
Buku pertama went to number 1 in 36 hours. Buku kedua tentang transformasi di Asia, specifically in Asia. So bagaimana kita tetap merespek, menghargai, mengingat tradisi kita dan integrasikan transformasi. So how do we blend both? How do we, stay true to our roots, tapi jangan stuck in yesterday. Bagaimana kita bisa menghadapi masa depan dan bagaimana kita mesti berubah so we don't get ousted by a competition.
How did you sell your book in 36 hours? And it was your first book.
It's my first book, yeah.
Okay.
The power of community. I think change, whether it's individual change, whether it's in an organization, kita nggak bisa melakukan sendiri. Kita mesti ada support network. Dan pas saya mulai bisnis saya 4 tahun yang lalu, saya mulai membangun community saya. Dan that was November 2019. I left corporate and I realized the only thing standing in the way of where I was today and where I wanted to be tomorrow was obscurity. Ya, saya berfokus kepada LinkedIn, soalnya kan saya B2B, biasanya saya itu di-engage sama CIO, sama CEO yang multinational, dan ya disitulah mereka hangoutnya. Jadi saya berfokus untuk educating the market, sharing my thought leadership with the world, and when you do that, when you share the good stuff, the glamorous stuff, and the really painful stuff as well, orang itu berarti they want to support you. They want to see you win. And all I did, saya itu nggak spend money on marketing, nggak spend money on PR. All I did was announce it on LinkedIn that my book was up. And so many people bought it from all around the world. Sampai hari ini juga, setiap bulan saya lihat in really funny places that I haven't even targeted. Kayak di Jerman sama Rusia, ada beberapa yang beli di Slovenia, Canada. So I think the point is, even if you're an employee atau you're a business owner, you never know who's watching.
Okay. The power of LinkedIn, yeah?
The power of social selling.
Social selling,
Yeah.
social media.
LinkedIn itu emang my chosen platform, tapi it doesn't matter what the platform is. Teman saya ada yang really big on Instagram, ada yang really big on TikTok. The point is, kalau kamu berniat, bersedia membagi cara fikir sama what your experiences, orang itu like they'll be magnetized to you. The right people will come to you.
Right. You were a corporate executive before and you worked for some of the biggest mining company.
Yeah, betul.
What made you decided to actually go on your own, becoming a thinker and consultant?
The dollars weren't keeping me warm at night.
Okay.
No,
Makes sense.
Aduh, kok kesepian ya? In all seriousness, ada 2 orang yang dalam senior leadership position yang benar-benar they protected me and they were my mentors, etc. Dua-duanya kayak was stabbed in the back. Terus saya nggak ada loyalty sama sekali.
In corporate politics.
Ya, politics begitulah.
Okay.
Terus saya like the only person you can count on is yourself. There's no such thing as a job for life. Terus dari luar sih kelihatannya seru banget, asik banget. Like I would fly around the world, exotic locations, speak at events, da-da-da-da. Tapi what you didn't see is the stress, the punishing schedule, the sacrifice of your personal time. Like I missed out a lot. Like banyak wedding lah, ulang tahun lah. Itu semuanya aku korbankan. And buat apa gitu? And so when my contract came to an end, I did a bit of soul searching and started wondering what if. And I thought, kalau nggak mulai sekarang, abis mau mulai kapan? Masa mau nunggu sampai umur 50? And so I just started. And I wanted to try creating something out of nothing because I was hungry for 3 things. Right? The first is meaning. I really mau bikin impact yang meaningful gitu. Kalau di corporate kan impactnya cuma in one small organization. Saya mau berbagi-bagi impactnya. So that I was looking for meaning. Kedua, mobility. I didn't want to be stuck in one city, one office every day. Saya memang dari dulu orangnya demennya jalan-jalan. Jadi I wanted to create something where it didn't matter where I physically was. Dan yang ketiga, obviously, money. Right? Because I'm not a charity. And so I was searching for those 3 things. So yeah, meaning, mobility, money, and starting my own thing would give me those 3 things.
Okay. If you don't mind me taking you back several years to your corporate life, how was it like, being, I'm not trying to be sexist here, but being a female executive in the mining company, big mining company, which perceived as a very male-dominated world.
Yeah.
Yet you led change management in that company.
Yeah.
How did you find it?
Wasn't easy. Benar-benar nggak gampang.
Yeah.
Gimana ya? I think kalau kita ada sponsor yang kuat, yang influential, yang berwibawa, dan dia nge-backing kita bisa use their influence to drive our agenda too. Dan itulah kuncinya. It's all about who introduces you to the room, to the masses. Like those first 2 minutes are crucial. Contohnya, pertama kali saya ke Papua New Guinea, terus ke mine site kan. I was like small, young, female, Asian, obviously. Yeah. Terus everyone else like gila 5,000 orang, and mereka itu gede-gede kayak football player. Tahu sendiri. And udah gitu the change that I was leading, perubahan budaya organisasi lagi, itu yang paling susah. Kenapa? Because it's invisible. Right? It's hard to measure. It's all about engagement, etc. Dan GM-nya itu yang di situs itu dia benar-benar di worship, itu udah dipuja-puja kayak Tuhan. Like there was a public holiday named after him. Wow, like everybody knew him. He's very well loved in the community. Dan dia itu benar-benar a big believer. Terus cara dia introduksi saya, it really meant a lot to me because it really resonated with people there. Dan setelah itu mereka siap-siap membagikan waktu. And I've seen the opposite happen where I went to another site and they didn't pave the way for me, the GM of that particular site. Dan GM yang nge-spot saya, anak buahnya juga nggak mau. They always say they're too busy, nggak mau meeting lah, nggak mau provide feedback, diminta input diam saja. So when you're trying to influence people who are more senior, more experienced than you, you need to have a strong sponsor who will visibly and vocally support you.
Right.
Soalnya mereka yang ada relationships ya, mereka yang mesti pakai their influence and their networks to help you drive the change. Makanya saya bilang change itu bukan solo effort. It really takes a village, right? It's a whole community.
Right, right, okay. How do you find managing change management projects in Australia compared to other countries? Is there any something different, in terms of how people react to it, how people resisted to it,
Mereka itu kalau mereka nggak setuju, apalagi international projects in Europe kayak Netherlands, etc. Mereka itu straight up tell you if they don't agree. It was a lot easier. So jadi nggak usah guessing, tau gak sih? Memang nggak demen ini gara-gara A, B, C, clear sekali. Kalau di Australia, not as full on as that. Kalau di Asia, oh my god, it's harder. It's harder because orang sering, they don't speak their mind. Malu-malu. They say iya ngerti tapi sebenarnya nggak ngerti. Kalau diminta feedback, mereka kayak sungkan gitu, soalnya takut maybe they don't want to hurt your feelings atau gimana. Jadi need more coaxing, more requests. Has to be little bit by little bit in Asia. And Australia is in the middle. If Europe is over here, Asia's here, Australia's di tengah-tengah begitu.
Right. Okay. Kalau klien dari mana aja, Fris, sejauh ini?
All over the world, literally, like Hong Kong, Singapore, Spanyol. Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Kalau untuk large scale project, Friska itu kerja sendiri atau you work with other consultants or with the other firms atau mainly with the internal team?
Tergantung. Kayak klien saya yang Spanyol itu, mereka itu social media aggregator, itu paling terbesar di dunia, dan itu especially was a digital transformation project. Saya yang memimpin change managementnya, tapi mereka ada konsultan lain, tapi bukan change people. Mereka very technical, very very tech focused. So I work hand in glove with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the best changes is when kliennya ada tim sendiri, high potentials, yang saya bisa coach and mentor to drive the change forward.
Okay.
Because they need to own the change. It's not my change. It's their change. So they need to resource it effectively. So I just come in, develop strateginya, develop, the processes, the success metrics, etc. And then I need their people, their arms and legs to make it their own.
Okay. You are the expert facilitator, probably, ya.
Udah tua nih, udah lama. Udah berpengalaman banyak.
Yeah. Please bisa cerita sedikit nggak? Maybe one of the projects where the first change, or the first project was something small, and then it led to something much bigger, something much more phenomenal. Ada experience seperti itu nggak?
So dulu banget, pas early in my career, saya itu berkonsultan di WA Police, Western Australia Police. Dan
police force. Okay.
Dan mereka itu actually the largest single policing jurisdiction in the world. So contohnya
in terms of coverage, geographical coverage, is it?
Yes, geographical coverage.
Iya, itu karena itu gede banget.
Soalnya state-nya gede banget kan. Udah gitu contohnya di Amerika, they have lots of police for everything. They have airport police, highway police, water police, etc. Kalau di Australia enggak, satu big police force. So saya di-engage waktu itu lewat Fujitsu. I was their change management consultant buat aplikasi tahu 000 kan di Indo apa sih nomor emergency 119 ya?
No idea.
Serius?
911 lah kali ya kalau Amerika.
Pokoknya 911 Amerika kan. Kalau Australia kan
siapa ya?
nggak pernah ada emergency darurat.
Kalau ini nomor 108.
Ya kalau di Australia kan 000. Ini aplikasi yang buat nge-track, nge-dispatch, manage, audit semua 000 calls. Jadi itu fire, emergency, sama police. So it's very, very important. Kalau error, polisi bisa ke rumah yang salah, helikopter dikirim kemana, kan the implications are very much life and death. So even though it didn't start small, it was still a big project, soalnya dampaknya itu besar kan, banyak policemen dan juga the 000 call operators. So there are about 2,000 of them. Mereka semua mesti di-train, etc., etc. But it turned even bigger, soalnya kan itu salah satu project yang paling tersukses yang direcognize sama WA government. Dan setelah itu, setelah mereka see what's possible, the commissioner wanted to then reimagine the future of policing. What would that look like? With tablets. Reimagine. Okay. Reimagining. Yeah, now it's common. Contohnya kayak kamera di body, body-worn cameras, drones doing, remote control drones, etc. Tapi back then itu belum bisa dipikirkan. Yeah, and using kayak AI to obviously plan out the best routes and call ahead to turn red traffic lights to green or green traffic lights red. So all of that wasn't possible 10 years ago. Yeah, so I was part of the visioning for that.
Right, interesting. And it turns out to be a very big project. Okay. Big money, big budget as well, I suppose, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. If you could design a change management playbook, which I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
What would be the first and most important rule?
Discomfort is the price of progress. Discomfort is the price of progress. What I mean by that is comfort zones, zona nyaman, keep us stuck. Bayangin aja kalau kita misalnya nggak pernah olahraga, kita kerjanya duduk di sofa terus. Hari pertama kita nge-gym, pasti sakit, pasti besoknya pegel, and the next day we're like, wah nggak mau pergi lagi deh. But sebagai business leaders dalam organisasi, we have to push through that discomfort because anything you do for the first time, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad, whether it's ice skating, whether it's playing golf, whether it's trying to speak in Mandarin. Yang pertama kali itu pasti nggak bagus, but we have to keep going. You have to keep going until you get proficient at it. So a lot of organizations give up halfway because they're not seeing the results. Tapi kita mesti develop proficiency dulu.
Okay. Have you ever encountered a situation where you observe that there is a change management fatigue atau mungkin kelelahan ya dengan project change management ini, and how do you normally go about it?
Apalagi sekarang ya, soalnya dibanding sebelum pandemi, kapabilitas kita buat menyerap informasi itu udah menurun drastis, like 2,5 kali lebih rendah daripada sebelum pandemi. Soalnya dalam 2 tahun itu, when we were locked up in our homes, our brains itu dipakai, it's called surge capacity. So its ability to absorb information and react in emergency situations. You may have heard of the fight, flight, or freeze response. Yeah. Tapi dalam 2 tahun itu kita selalu dalam freeze, flight, or fight. Dan kita makanya sekarang lebih lelah. Ditambah juga information overload, right? Di mana-mana. Dulu kan cuman informasi palingan di TV sama di koran. Kalau sekarang it's everywhere. It's 24/7. It's in our pockets. So we're constantly bombarded with information. Udah gitu sekarang every company seems to be right-sizing, shrinking. Budgets shrinking, people, teams and shrinking, tapi you're expected to do more. So the pressure is more. So combined with all of that and lots and lots of change, technological change, government change, regulatory change, orang itu capek. So what you have to do is remember to take breaks. When I say breaks, just small rituals that remind people how far you've come, and to remind people where you're going, and what it's going to feel like, what it's going to look like when you get there. Many organizations don't stop to reflect and do that. Udah gitu kalau misalnya transformasinya yang besar-besaran, yang bertahun-tahun, you need smaller wins. You need to keep smaller wins, not just oh my god it's 3 years away, tapi tiap bulan apa itu? Like what have you achieved? And to remember to do that, to ritualize it. And I say ritual Jangan sampai rutin. Rutin is boring. Rutin people switch off. The difference between a ritual and a routine, a ritual has meaning behind it. It has intention. Right?
This is deep. Okay.
Contohnya bikin teh.
Okay.
Right? Bikin teh di Amerika palingan panasin air, masukin tea bag, celup, udah palingan 30 detik kan. Nah, kita bandingkan sama orang Jepang. Tea ceremony Jepang yang paling basic 45 menit. Full tea ceremony 4 jam. And it's because they make it a whole ritual. It's infused with meaning and intention. We have to do the same with change.
Wow. Okay. How do you do it? I mean, sometimes as a consultant, you are new to these people, right? And then the project is new. It's basically everyone is new to each other.
Yeah.
And everyone is new to the topic as well, How do you do it? I'm trying to understand, how do you go about it? I mean, try to instill that ritual, in the change management process.
Okay, I'll give you an example of a company that's done it really, really well. Ini company-nya di Berlin, namanya Blind Feed. So it's a tech company. Dan dia itu CEO-nya mau membuat company-nya lebih inovatif. Tapi what happens when you have inovasi, you also have failure. Because that's just part and parcel. Some things you try won't work. And that's okay. Correct. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. As long as you learn from it. As long as you don't repeat it. Dan dia mau instill innovation and failure as core values. Bagaimana caranya? He went first. He implemented every week a ritual called, I'm going to swear, it's called Fuck Up Fridays. And that's literally what it's called. You can bleep me out or whatever.
Did you create this?
No. Dia yang create. I'm not going to take credit for it. He started it. Tapi
it's not even a credit. Okay.
Tapi yang pertama itu awkward banget. Like I said, you do anything for the first time, it's a bit awkward. Nah, he went first. Dia itu sharing, dia itu ada kegagalan semacam apa. Tapi it's not like, oh no, I failed. It's not a sad story. Like, ini kegagalannya, ini yang what I observe from it, dan ini tindakan yang gue ambil as a result of that kegagalan supaya kegagalan itu nggak diulangi lagi. Not just that, but the whole team comes together. He cooks for them, or they order out, etc. And then every week, rotasi, it's a different person that talks about a failure. And it took a few times, don't get me wrong, not instant, everyone's like, yeah, this is amazing. But after a few times, they started looking forward to it. They love Fuck Up Fridays. And that's the same with this. Like, how can you ritualize what seems to be like an everyday thing, or what can you start doing to make this a ritual?
Right, okay. What are some of the things about change management that you think is a myth and you would like to debunk?
Mitos yang paling besar yaitu resistance itu sesuatu yang buruk. Resistance is not something bad. Resistance itu emang udah sifat manusia. Beberapa, di prehistoric era, that's what kept us safe. That's what kept our ancestors safe, right? Ada yang aneh-aneh, langsung lari. Supaya nggak dimakan sama dinosaurus lah, apalah. Tapi sekarang itu, it's not very useful. But resistance is not a bad thing. You just need to know what's driving it. Dan disinilah banyak organisasi sama pemimpin, they just think, tuh orang susah. And they don't take the time to understand why. People resist because they're scared and they don't want to admit it. They're scared of uncertainty. Dan mereka itu takut kehilangan. And often kehilangannya one of these 6 P's, right? The first P, obviously, position. Am I going to be out of a job? Second is pay. Ini bakal dapat bonus atau enggak nih? Atau jadi susah? The third is performance. If it's something really new, my performance is going to suffer and nggak mau malu. I don't want to look stupid, right? And then it's protection. Maybe di kasus restruktur, bos kesayangan udah no longer there. Dia nggak mau, dia bakal push back. And then it's prestige. So maybe this person had a big budget, a big team, and it's being cut, and therefore his sense of self-worth is taking a hit. So if you understand people and you figure out one or more of these 6 P's, what's driving the resistance, then you know how to manage it. You know how to diffuse it.
Right. Okay. How do you balance the need for change management as well as the preservation of some of the positive organizational culture?
I think you need to look at change as something that enables the preservation of the good things of your culture. Soalnya kalau nggak berubah sama sekali, not changing doesn't mean there's no impact. Not changing means you're regressing. So it's not about standing still. You'll actually go backwards. Why? Because your competitors are moving forward and adapting and experimenting and doing funky new things. So there's a quote that I like. I can't remember who said it. It's something like, don't change your destination, but adjust your sails. So that's what you have to do. Like, I'm not saying change your values and change everything about your organization, but change how you express those values and change how you actually create value as well.
Okay.
Because you have to. Because the world is changing around you. Like, if government's changing, laws are changing, technology is changing, staying still is not an option.
Okay. Does storytelling approach help in managing change management projects?
Extremely. We are hardwired for story. Everyone knows their favorite story since childhood, right? Little Red Riding Hood, Sleeping Beauty, Ramayana, whatever it is, and we remember that even now, decades later as adults. Dan stories itu bukan stories di dalam change management bukan berarti once upon a time reading Pinocchio to your people. That's not what I mean by stories. Like, there's different types of stories. Ada success stories, customer stories, right? Vision stories. So yeah, that's what I mean by stories.
Okay. Right. How do you see the role of technology in change management in the future? AI, for example.
So, sebagai konsultan, banyak aktivitas yang sekarang jauh lebih cepat, and sekarang saya tuh nggak butuh analyst. So it can do a lot of the grunt work, a lot of the data crunching for me. So I find I'm able to do more, and I need less people as well. Yeah, it's useful in creating stories. It's useful in stress testing your strategy. It's useful in, it's like a sparring partner to me. Yeah. So it tests my thinking. It helps me uncover blind spots. But obviously it can't replicate empathy, human judgment, and creativity, and the ability to develop trust with your clients.
What's the example with stress testing?
Misalnya, like, I'll say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and I don't know, write my strategy for a rollout in Africa and Europe. Can you see anything wrong with it? Is there anything I've missed? That's what I mean by stress testing.
Okay, got it. But is there such a specialized application for change management, with AI technology in the market, or you basically use more like a large language model, the most common one?
Ada sih change management software, but I haven't been impressed by it. It's not a sparring partner. It's like it'll digitize a lot of change management artifacts. Contohnya stakeholder analysis. Kan itu biasanya quite intensive, lots of data crunching, so it'll just populate that automatically. But it's AI driven, yes, but not the thinking part, just simply the populating part. Right. So it recognizes patterns and it makes it faster.
Right. Probably you need to talk to them more often so they can pick your brain.
Yeah, bisa juga. But I think there's things out there that can be used to measure change management effectiveness. Kayak contohnya minggu ini saya ketemu sama, he's called Donny. Dia itu orang Indo di sini di Jakarta, dan dia aplikasinya namanya Happy Five. So dia udah 11 tahun. Dulu pas awalnya Happy Five itu buat performance management, buat OKR management. But I see a lot of applications with change management as well, because it's all about alignment, performance and engagement.
Right.
So I think there's other tools out there that weren't created for change management but can be applied.
Okay. Okay. In today's era, we're changing all the time. I mean, in the past, if you talk about change management, it's like 2 or 3 years, once every 2 or 3 years affairs, or once every 5 years affair, for example. Not like we're changing every day. Does that mean that there are more works for you, Fris?
For me?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's causing me more work. I think it's keeping business leaders preoccupied unnecessarily. So bulan lalu saya tuh bicara di konferensi di Bali tentang teknologi. And pertanyaannya tiap minggu sepertinya ada tool AI baru yang kita mesti ngerti gimana gini-gini gitu. What's your advice to leaders? My advice is newest isn't always better. Like if you spent your time and your money just making full use of what you already have, you'd be a lot further ahead than constantly learning something new every single week. Just because you don't have to do that. Who says we have to do that? Who says we should do that? Contohnya, my HP. Maybe I only use about 30% of its functions. Like there's no need for me. This is 3 models old. I don't need to be constantly upgrading to the latest model. Same with business leaders. You don't need the next shiny new AI tool. Yeah.
Okay. Right. And what bring you to Indonesia? I'm curious.
A few things. So I feel like I've been there, done that in Australia. Udah climbing the corporate ladder, udah jadi boss, udah like did all these check, did all these things, the TED Talk, the book, this, that. And I wanted something new. I wanted a new frontier. I wanted another challenge. Terus saya kan sejak umur 3 udah tinggal di luar negeri. And I never really discovered who I was. And it took me this long to put everything in place. When I say put everything in place, I mean, transition to a 99% remote first business, have enough clients around the world, sell my house in Sydney, buy a house in Indonesia, all these things happened. And also this region, the ASEAN region, it will be the next superpower. I mean, Indonesia is going to be the largest economy in Southeast Asia in a few short years. Tapi big doesn't mean better. So if we don't manage this growth, if we don't manage this change carefully, then it's going to blow up in our face. Dan juga pas saya kecil, kayak umur di bawah 10-an lah, ingat banget Indonesia kayaknya top gitu, like above Malaysia, above Singapore in terms of performance, quality, etc.
Yeah.
Now we're lagging behind. Lagging behind, malu-maluin. And so I wanted to do my bit to drive us forward again, to leapfrog ahead, whatever that may be. So that's what I'm exploring. That's what this year has been about. It's been exploring, observing, seeing what works in the market, where I can add value, where I can make an impact.
Right. What are your findings so far?
I find that they underestimate the people element of it. Mereka pikir bisa mengatasi resistensi simply because mereka lebih senior. But what they don't realize is there's a lot of hidden costs, like quiet quitting, like present absenteeism, right? Just because your people come into the office doesn't mean they're productive. They could be intentionally slowing down and things like that. And, sedikit-sedikit menjadi bukit. So that's a lot of unnecessary costs where could have been avoided if you manage this change effectively. Udah gitu, 10 tahun yang lalu, everybody had to get on to the technology change, right? It was all about digital transformation. Now everyone's talking about sustainability transformation. So we can't just pay this lip service. If we want to compete on a global scale, right, kita bisa lihat aja di industri pertambangan, they're gone. Rio Tinto's gone, BHP's gone, all the big international players have gone. And other industries will also leave this country if we don't take this change seriously.
Okay. Let's say if you meet with a new client, a CEO, for example, or a business owner, for example, what is your first message to them with regard to change management?
If they've come to me, they're obviously in pain. If they still need convincing on the value, etc., I just ask them what percentage of their strategy, their transformation, what percentage depends on people doing things differently, thinking differently, behaving differently. The number's pretty high. It's usually 90% or 100%. And that change doesn't happen organically. Like, it happens because there's a structure, there's a process, and leadership are active and engaged.
Okay. Last question. You mentioned to me about 3 points why you decided to actually, leave corporate life and set up your own business.
Yeah.
Meaning, dollar. What's the other one again?
Mobility. Yeah.
Do you find them all?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I can always use more money though.
Me too.
You can never have enough.
Okay. Good to hear that.
I know people always say, like, because, I live in Bali. Everyone always has the same response, like, oh my God, that's amazing. Da-da. I'm like, yeah, it is freaking amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Like, weekends I can hop over to Bangkok, go over to Tokyo, speak at this event, da-da-da-da. So, 5 years ago, didn't think it was possible. So I think that's the blessing of the pandemic. Like, remote businesses are real, are thriving.
Yeah.
And, I've met so many people. Everybody's been so welcoming. So it's been a great first year back in the motherland.
Thank you, Friska. Very inspiring.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.